Hi, this is Katie McCoy. You know, every cultural controversy starts with an idea. World's journalists work every day to uncover the assumptions, beliefs, and worldviews driving the news. You need the who, what, where, and when, but you also need the how and the why. World stands for sound journalism grounded in facts and biblical truth. And if that work matters to you, I hope you'll support World's June Giving Drive at wng.org/donate. That's wng.org/donate. I'll be back in less than 10 minutes with Culture Friday. We'll talk more then.
Good morning. Social media celebrates self-medicated moms as a new report documents a decline in fatherhood.
That and more is ahead on Culture Friday with Katie McCoy. Plus, Woody and Buzz return, but their newest rival isn't a toy.
You're not even listening to me!
Oh, no, I was listening. I'm always listening.
Colin Garbarino will have a review of Toy Story 5. And music critic Arsenio Orteza catches up with the Petersons.
Would you want your 6-year-old son singing this song? It hits different when you think about a kid singing it.
It's Friday, June 19th. This is The World and Everything in It from listener-supported World Radio. I'm Myrna Brown.
And I'm Lindsay Mast. Good morning.
Up next, Kent Covington with today's news.
Iranian oil tankers and ships are once again sailing through the Strait of Hormuz. That comes amid a framework peace deal by which the U.S. lifted its naval blockade against Iran, and Tehran has agreed to reopen the strait. But it could take weeks for normal commercial traffic to resume due to safety concerns. And that framework peace agreement is drawing mixed reviews in Washington. Republican Senator Tom Cotton says everyone's happy about the strait reopening, but
I do have concerns that certain aspects of this deal are a step in the wrong direction. For instance, we're going to lift sanctions on Iran's oil exports right away.
Iran gets that relief up front at the beginning of a 2-month negotiating window over its nuclear program. But most of Iran's incentives are phased, set to take place gradually as Tehran makes good on its assurances. Vice President J.D. Vance told White House reporters that includes a planned U.S. troop drawdown in the area.
What we're saying is that we will withdraw troops to the pre-conflict level, meaning we're not going to keep a couple of extra aircraft carrier groups over there. The Iranians don't want that. Frankly, we don't want that either.
But President Trump has made clear that further military action remains on the table if Iran does not comply. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth has announced a 6-month Pentagon review of American forces in Europe. The review's outcome will depend on how quickly European allies take responsibility for their own security. Speaking in Brussels to many of his European counterparts, Hegseth criticized NATO allies for not spending more on defense.
NATO 3.0 is post-Cold War recognition that it needs to go back to a real hardline military alliance that has real military capabilities capable of deterring right here on the continent and taking the lead for the conventional defense.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte noted a significant increase in European defense spending and said Washington's demands are reasonable.
It's a fair deal with the United States. You said we are committed to NATO, but we also have an expectation.
An expectation that each NATO ally pulls its own weight on defense. Hegseth also criticized many allies for not providing access to bases for U.S. forces during the Iran war and for prioritizing things like gender equality and climate change over defense. In Moscow, an air defense missile hits its target as Russian forces attempt to repel one of Ukraine's largest drone attacks since the start of the war. A fireball and massive smoke plume filled the sky on Thursday after Ukraine hit a major Moscow oil refinery for a second time in a week. Speaking from Brussels, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called the attack retaliation for a Russian strike that damaged a Kyiv monastery. 11 people were killed in that strike that sparked a fire at the Kyiv Pechersk Lavra. Built in the 11th century, Zelensky said the historic monastery played a key role in Christianity's spread in the region.
Taking such places is, in fact, a crime against humanity. Of course, we are preparing our responses to such Russian attacks. And today you can see one of those responses in the Moscow region this morning.
Ukraine's strike at the refinery also resulted in hundreds of flight disruptions at airports in and near Moscow. In South Florida, crews in Miami-Dade County are still battling two wildfires that have scorched more than 16,000 acres at the edge of the Everglades. Fire Chief Ray Jadala says it started Sunday as a single brush fire sparked by lightning, but
the fire has now split into two. The fire has two names. We have the Quarry 2 fire, and we also have the Well fire.
The larger Quarry fire is now more than 50% contained, and the Well fire around a quarter. But thick smoke has fouled the air for miles, including in nearby Doral. Mayor Christy Fraga.
We ask you to limit outdoor exposure, keep windows closed, put your air on recirculation. Obviously, there is some ash. And for seniors or young children with asthma, please take particular precautions.
Firefighters are also up against brutal heat. Forecasters say the heat index could hit 110 degrees this week. Relief is finally showing up at the gas pump. The national average for regular unleaded has dropped below $4 per gallon. AAA now has that average at $3.99, down about 13 cents in just a week. The big driver, of course, is news of the framework peace deal with Iran. That pact to reopen the Strait of Hormuz caused crude to tumble to its lowest in 3 months. Most experts expect prices to continue dropping, but caution that we're not likely to see a return to pre-war prices anytime soon. I'm Kent Covington, and coming up, the toys of Toy Story are back to face a new threat, technology. Plus, Arsenio Orteza talks with American roots band The Petersons about their new album. This is The World and Everything in It.
It's Friday, June 19th. Glad to have you along for today's edition of The World and Everything in It. Good morning. I'm Myrna Brown.
And I'm Lindsay Mast. It's Culture Friday, and joining us now is author, speaker, and co-host of World's Reality Check, the reality chick herself, Katie McCoy. Katie, it's good to see you.
Hey, Lindsay and Myrna, so good to see you. And Lindsay, I see that you have taken up Nick's mantle in calling the reality chick.
A little bit. I figure if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. So
yeah, he's trying to make it stick. All right.
We'll roll with it. So, Katie, there's an alarming new documentary out. It's done by David Daleiden and the Center for Medical Progress. It tells the story of a couple who allege that during an abortion the mother got at 5 months pregnant, their baby girl was delivered alive, then trafficked for her organs. Now, while the allegations are horrifying and worth their own discussion, what I'd really like to focus with you on are some of the things that this mother talks about that led her to consider abortion in the first place. Things like not having a career, not having much money, there was a dead car with no brakes, things of that nature. And then this long-distance relationship with the child's father. Katie, I know you call these solvable problems, but those are all scary life circumstances for someone who is looking at trying to support a child. So I want to know what stands out to you about what is actionable here and by whom to keep a couple like this from moving to abortion as the answer.
So glad you asked about this story, Lindsay. It is absolutely horrifying. And as we know from different pro-life advocacy groups, this is being done. You know, we'll hear from a lot of pro-abortion activists and Planned Parenthoods that it's just a hoax, it's fake news, it's a total lie that this isn't happening. But we know that it is. And this story also came out around the same time I became aware of a mission from Heartbeat International talking about tracking nationally the documented cases of either abortion pill poisonings or forced abortions. And this idea of forced abortions, I think we need to lean into what that really entails. So certainly for women who are caught up in human trafficking, the abortion pill and abortion on demand is a trafficker's green light. He can continue to exploit women and girls as long as these things are law. But this story kind of has I don't know if we can call it coerced abortion, but But certainly the idea of a woman getting an abortion, not because she wanted to get rid of the pregnancy necessarily, but because she didn't see a way forward. And one thing that I wish we would take up, a mantle that I wish we would take up in the church, is asking what are some of those factors that make a woman vulnerable to choosing abortion? And to the extent that women do not have a support system, they become even more vulnerable to an abortion. And so, one of the things that I think is missing from a lot of our pro-life conversations, we focus only on the policies, but oftentimes we miss the people and the lived experiences that they have that is between them and that choice. So, what can we do as the church? I wonder what would have happened if this woman had a community of believers, had a strong family support system. You hear the reasons behind why she got an abortion, and they're not life and death problems, right? Her car needed a repair. She needed a better job. Those are fixable. Those are solvable problems. And the solution to them is not terminating her pregnancy. But all of this, you start talking about those factors and what we can do to mitigate those factors. And I think a lot of our pro-choice American neighbors will get kind of angry, because if it's all about choice, how pro-choice are they truly? And do you actually believe that abortion is, at the very least, a tragedy that you wish you could avoid? If people actually believed that, we would spend a lot more time helping a woman, a vulnerable woman in society, get connected to institutions and relationships that could help her, rather than only advocating for her to have the legal permission to kill her unborn child.
Katie, what's interesting to me is the presence of the father in that story.
Yeah.
As I recall in reading it, he's willing to be identified, whereas she was not. But I mention that because that leads into our next story about fathers. Sunday, of course, is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the dads, including my sweet husband, Stanley. There's a new study out about fatherhood in America. The Institute for Family Studies reports fewer young men are becoming fathers at all. In fact, they're calling what they're seeing the vanishing father. They break it down by age, education, and ideology, with declines in all three areas. But the starkest divide is cultural. Only 37% of liberal men are fathers versus more than 60% of their conservative peers. And that gap has widened dramatically since the 1980s. So, Katie, out of those three categories, age, education, ideology, what surprised you the most?
You know, I have to say, Murder, I don't know that any of it surprised me as much as it saddened me. So first of all, let me just do one happy note. Shout out to my dad, the great Bruce McCoy, this Father's Day. He's the best. And he was always, for my whole life, extraordinarily present. And we never got the sense that we were a burden to him. And I know that there are a lot of people listening that they can agree that the presence of their fathers was a game changer the older that they get, recognizing that a dialed in, faithful father was a pivotal part of their upbringing and future success. Fathers are the greatest metric of future success of children in society. Now, that's not a dismissal of the importance of mothers. Far from it. Rather, mothers bring a different set of life skills and emotional regulation and personal identity formation. When women are in crisis in a nation, we talk about things like mental health and education. When men are in crisis in a nation, we start talking about macroeconomics and national security. And there's a reason for that. It's because what God designed each parent to bring not only to an individual family, but to a society at large. And so a lot of what we're seeing is the result of a very me-centered focus of life, career, relationships, future, and family. But one of the most concerning things I think we could draw was a big connection here. This is going to seem a little bit like a leap, but I promise there's a strong correlation. One of the things that we're seeing among young men, especially, is this strong gravitation to ideologically fringe identities. We're seeing this in different corners of the internet, and it's alarming things that young men are identifying with. And I believe that is deeply connected because with the decline of family, with men and women choosing not to marry, not to have children, with that comes social isolation, a lack of a cohesive sense of identity, of meaning, of purpose. And with family, all of the priorities change, all of the perspective changes, even the reason why you go to work changes. Because when men have children, all of a sudden they have this mission, purpose, things that get them up and going to work and making stable, safe decisions that are not only for the benefit of their family, but compounded through society for the health of an entire nation. And so these young men that are disconnected from family relationships, they're finding that on these fringe corners of the internet. So much of this goes back to the very basic way that God created us to live in community with other human beings. And that central institution is the family.
How much of this, though, is also driven by women who don't want to have children and therefore aren't making men fathers?
Oh, it's enormous. Everything that we talk about, I've lost count of how many times I could say, well, this is from the sexual revolution of the 1960s, and it's a backlash of a backlash of a backlash. We are still seeing the fallout of a cultural mindset that separated biological sex and what God created sex for, and cohesive social relationships. Because once we separated sex from relationships, all sorts of chaos has followed. And we're just still seeing the effects of that.
Well, Katie, I do love to give dads their due. So I too will give a shout out both to my father and to my husband, who are excellent dads. But the news is what it is. So happy Father's Day, fathers. And moving on to the issue of mothers, specifically mothers who are turning to a form of escapism they call gardening. It may not be what you think it is. It's social media code for smoking marijuana to get through the day. And it's the focus of an article this week in The Atlantic. The idea that motherhood is something to be survived. Well, while publicly numbing out with pot may be new, self-medicating is not. What do you say, Katie?
I could hardly believe it when this headline popped up that women feel that parenting is so stressful, so anxiety inducing, and so exhausting that they're just trying to medicate their days away. Not the first time we've seen that. You might have seen the wine mommy culture. Decades ago, women took Valium, is what this article details. But, I think this goes hand in hand with the previous story, because with the decline of the traditional nuclear family of two parents raising children in a stable home, with that, women and men, but women especially, are feeling more and more isolated. We have had a decline in what sociologists call mediating institutions. Mediating institutions are relationships or organizations that exist between an individual and the state. So family, marriage, volunteer clubs, churches, neighborhood groups, these were all mediating institutions. And when they are strong in a society, that society is very healthy. So I think what we're seeing in both of the previous stories, the one affecting fathers and mothers, is the effects of our social isolation. Now, the solution to that is not just to put people in a room and tell them to talk. It's that they need the mediating institutions primarily of marriage and family, and then also of religious identity in church.
Well, big announcement from British Prime Minister Keir Starmer this week. Britain banning children under 16 from using a range of social media apps. We're talking Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, all about protecting young people from harmful content and excessive screen time. They're following the same model as the ban in Australia. And interesting, Starmer stressed that enforcement will target tech companies and not children. What do you think, Katie? Too much? Too little?
You know, Myrna, I'm torn on this law because on the one hand, we're seeing just study after study on the effects of social media and screen time on children and teens. And we're still going to be discovering that for probably decades to come. And I think we can say, spoiler alert, it's all going to be bad. It's pretty much all negative. So on the one hand, this seems like a really good step forward. But I have to see it through the lens of this relationship between the government, the family, and the individual. And so back to this conversation about the role of families and churches and voluntary associations like that in relationship to the state in terms of regulating behavior. So now what's happened is a role that typically would belong to a parent, determining screen time for their children, what apps they have access to, what they're able to follow. All of that now is being outsourced effectively to the state. All of this we can trace to the breakdown of very simple relationships: marriage, family, religious identity, and church. And when we see these things, we see an overall stability in society. So it's fascinating. We could talk all day, ladies, about how the progressive left, you see this correlation with the progressive left, that traditional marriage and parenting, indeed pregnancy itself, is considered oppressive. We need to dismantle these things. But what replaces it? It is the control and centralization of the state. So I get the desire to protect children, but I think it's a bit of an indication of what their society is, that parents are not the ones that the government is looking to raise their children.
Katie McCoy, author, speaker, co-host of World's Reality Check. The reality chick herself. Thank you, Katie.
Always good to be with you all.
Additional support comes from Nuggets of Wisdom, digital homeschool curriculum, unit studies, and educational resources for growing minds. nuggets-of-wisdom.com. From Ascend by Unbound, a real-world faith-centered college alternative for gap year, trades, and degree-seeking students. More at beunbound.us/world. And from Asbury University, where students grow in Christ, prepare for careers, and build lifelong connections in Kentucky or online. asbury.edu.
Next on The World and Everything in It, Pixar returns to the story that started it all.
That's right. This weekend, the latest Toy Story movie opens in theaters. And in this one, the toys are confronting a new threat vying for their kids' attention: technology. Here's World's arts and culture editor Colin Garbarino with his thoughts on Toy Story 5.
Pixar's Toy Story has proved to be one of Hollywood's most reliable franchises. But the studio has been in the doldrums lately, so it's no surprise it decided to bring out a fifth installment. Each of the previous 4 movies has enjoyed solid box office returns, and audiences love the films. I mean, personally, I think number 3 should have been the last. It's my favorite in the series, and I didn't need to see Woody walk away from his faith at the end of Toy Story 4. But I acknowledge most fans enjoyed seeing these familiar characters dealing with familiar go through the familiar story all over again. I'm happy to report Pixar didn't drop the ball with Toy Story 5. It's certainly not as good as 3, but it's miles better than 4. In this film, the toys are once again living in fear that they're becoming obsolete and that playtime might be coming to an end. How's that possible? Bonnie, the little girl who owns them, is only For Jessie, she reaches out to her old pal Woody for advice, and he's eager to return to Bonnie's bedroom. Will likely resonate with many adults. They don't necessarily want her to have a lily pad, but they're worried she's being left out because she can't text with friends. Pixar's approach is pretty nuanced when it comes to tech, probably because Disney has plenty of tech it wants to sell our kids. Instead of condemning tech geared for kids, Toy Story 5 shifts the question to whether it's helping kids develop the right kinds of friendships. The story is enjoyable, but parents ought to know that the film is rated PG for some rude humor. I was surprised Pixar stooped to potty humor, but I will admit it's more clever than the kind that's in most kids' movies. Also, just because Woody returns, don't get your hopes up that he'll stay. He remains an apostate, once again abandoning his friends and his kid.
It's good to see them fighting again. It sure is.
I'm Colin Garbarino.
Good morning. This is The World and Everything in It from listener-supported World Radio. I'm Myrna Brown.
And I'm Lindsay Mast. Up next, a music group that proves the family that plays and prays together stays together. It was in 2003 that Lieutenant Colonel John Peterson decided that he, his wife, and their 4 children would become a bluegrass family band. But it took almost 15 years before the Petersons officially decided to go all in. They've since become one of Branson, Missouri's most popular attractions. World's music critic Arsenio Orteza says their new album is pretty good too.
The album Father, A Moment With You is so nice the Petersons have released it twice. Well, not actually twice. Technically, the version subtitled Live Album Release Concert on their YouTube channel is just a video. But the Petersons are so tight musically and vocally, it's almost impossible to tell the difference between what's live and what's studio. Try to guess which one this song is. It's an a cappella number called Not Afraid of Bad
News. My heart will stand firm as I'm trusting in you, so I'll not be moved. The Syrian army had surrounded a city and set up a camp in the night.
It's actually not from the album or the concert. It's a standalone performance that the 4 Peterson siblings recorded for a video showing them singing outdoors. And yes, despite the absence of ambient nature sounds, what you just heard really is live.
We have talked to our audio team. We're like, maybe just have like a little of the crickets still in so people believe that like we are outside doing this.
That's Ellen Peterson Haygood. She's the Peterson singing lead on Not Afraid of Bad News. She also performs or shares lead vocals on 3 other new songs. The Petersons apportion lead vocal duties pretty democratically. On Father, A Moment With You, 5 of the 6 Petersons get to sing or co-sing lead on multiple songs, and that goes for the dobro player Emmett Franz, the group's adopted Peterson, as well.
We lift our eyes, Lord, how long the world it cries, Lord, how long.
So why did the Petersons' parents, John and Karen, want their family to form a music group in the first place? Basically, John thought his kids would be better off playing music together than playing video games. And why a bluegrass band? Karen loved bluegrass. Eventually, in keeping with the genre's requirements, Katie learned the fiddle, Ellen banjo, Matt guitar, and Julianne mandolin. But there was still the issue of who would play the upright or double bass.
My mom is just very gifted musically. And so she was able to just pick up the bass as like a temporary until we were able to find someone else. But then she was so good at it. It's so funny. She loves her bass. If you try to carry it, she gets upset. And so people are always getting mad at us. Like, don't let your mom carry that big instrument. And we're like, she will not let us touch it.
One thing that she would let them touch as they were growing up was a wide variety of music. An album called Father, a Moment with You, and songs titled Not Afraid of Bad News and Lord, How Long are strong clues about the Petersons' Christian faith. But a look at their back catalog shows that they're familiar and comfortable with more than gospel music and hymns. They've covered songs by Dolly Parton, the Beatles, Sting, the Cranberries, and Fleetwood Mac. Still, it's doubtful that even their biggest fans saw this cover coming.
Mama, life had just begun, but now I've gone and thrown it all away. Mama.
Katie says that although she and Emmett had a role in making Queen bluegrass friendly, it was her mom that made the performance as good as it is.
My mom was very passionate about, we are going to play every single chord of this song. We didn't want to skip anything. So she helped figure out our vocals and everything.
The Petersons do not, however, consider every type of music fair game. One of their slogans is, discover a more wholesome alternative. And they mean it. Katie says that despite their wide-ranging tastes, they have a strong filter on what they perform.
Our mom's initial phrase was like, would you want your 6-year-old son singing this song? And so through the lens of that, we have not chosen many things because it's like, it hits different when you think about a kid singing it.
Their family-friendly approach is working. So far, they've accumulated over 20 million streams on Spotify and over 300 million views on YouTube. They also perform to enthusiastic crowds twice a week at Branson's Little Opry Theater. They've even toured abroad. And frankly, the success couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. I'm Arsenio Orteza.
Yesterday, you heard a brief conversation with journalist and author Molly Hemingway about her new book, Alito. Tomorrow, we have the complete interview for you. You'll hear why Hemingway calls Justice Samuel Alito the man who reshaped the Supreme Court and restored the Constitution. From his working-class New Jersey roots to the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, she traces the life, jurisprudence, and influence of one of the court's most consequential justices. She also shares new reporting on the pressure campaign that followed the Dobbs leak, the relationships inside the court, and what Alito's career can teach anyone trying to balance principle with practical results. Tomorrow morning, our full conversation with Molly Hemingway, author of Alito. And before we go, a reminder, if you've not given yet, we'd be grateful for your support of World's June Giving Drive, wng.org/donate. That's wng.org/donate. And now it's time to name the crew who helped with this week's programs. Mary Reichard, David Bonson, Arsenio Orteza, Lauren Smith, Liz Likens, Lauren Canterbury, Amy Etchison, Jenny Lynn Schmidt, Mary Muncy, Cal Thomas, Janie B. Cheney, Seth Trout, Hunter Baker, Colin Garbarino, Katie McCoy, and Josh Gagne. Thanks also to our breaking news crew, Kent Covington, Steve Klosterman, Travis Kircher, Daniel Devine, and Christina Grube. And thanks to the guys who are up late so your program is ready early. Tech producers Benj Eicher and Carl Peets. Harrison Waters is Washington producer. Kristen Flavin is features editor. Emma Eicher is assistant producer, and Nick Eicher is executive producer. I'm producer Lindsay Mast.
And I'm Myrna Brown. The World and Everything in It comes to you from World Radio. World's mission is biblically objective journalism that informs, educates, and inspires. The Bible says, "How then will they call on him in whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him of whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news." Verses 14 and 15 of Romans chapter 10. Now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times in every way. The Lord be with you all. Go now in grace and peace.